Welcome to the January 14th, 2021 Parma City School District Board of Education meeting. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Boy, that sounds bad, huh?
Yeah, one day we'll be all on the same page.
That sounds awful.
Okay. Roll call, Mr. Nucio.
Mrs. Bratz.
Present.
Mrs. Carpus. Mr. Kreis.
Present.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Present.
Mr. Vaughn.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Nucio. At this time, I'd like to confirm that all board members and administrators are connected to this meeting. So if each person would confirm that they can see, hear, or both when asked, please do so. Mr. Vaughn?
Yes, both.
Both. Mrs. Bratz?
Both.
Mrs. Carpus? Not present. Mr. Kreis?
Both.
Dr. Smilak?
Both, sir.
Mr. Nucio?
Both.
And me, John Schweitzer, also both. Dr. Smilak, can you please confirm that this meeting is currently being live streamed?
It is.
Thank you. Board members and administration, if at any time during the meeting you cannot hear or see the other participants, please speak up immediately so that the technical difficulty can be addressed. Dr. Smilak, please monitor the live streaming throughout the meeting, and if the live streaming stops for any reason, please speak up immediately so that the technical difficulty can be addressed. This meeting will be conducted electronically in accordance with amended Substitute House Bill 197 and House Bill 404, as more specifically detailed on the notice attached to tonight's agenda. With that, I move to adopt Resolution 2021-0106, resolution suspending requirements for in-person meetings under board bylaws.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2021-0106. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Nucio?
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn.
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz.
Yes.
Mr. Kreis.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-0106 has been approved. This time we move to information to the board. Dr. Smilak?
Thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. I sent a connect or a school messenger message this evening to our entire school community to remind them that we are starting hybrid. We're extremely excited to see students back in classrooms. We know we've had some students with disabilities and some career tech, well, all of our career tech students in classrooms, but in terms of really, opening up our doors to all of our students, it's been quite some time. We spent the entire second quarter actually in remote, so we're very excited to come back the third quarter in a hybrid situation. We anticipate much of the third quarter, if not all of it, being in a hybrid situation. If you can recall back to when we developed our plan for the second semester, we said that we would be in hybrid if Cuyahoga County was in orange or red status. We do want to let our parents know, because we've gotten a lot of questions about, when are we coming back full go? We are watching, especially the vaccination development, and we're hopeful that we can get our staff vaccinated, and that can certainly accelerate the process. But at this point, we will continue to follow the color scheme of the county, with orange and red being a hybrid situation. If we got to yellow, certainly we would bring everybody back. We don't anticipate going to purple since we haven't to this point, but if we are in purple, we would have to be fully remote again. I want to thank all of our families, all of our teachers for all of the work they did in remote. I have said it frequently, and I will say it again. I would put what we did in remote education up against anybody in Northeast Ohio. I think we had a great model. I think our teachers worked extremely hard at the skills that we helped reinforce and the tools that we have purchased and really identified as our core toolbox. And we're proud of what we've offered. But at the same time, there's really no replacement to that connection that can happen in a classroom and organic conversations between individual students and teachers. That aha moment where teachers can look around the room and see blank stares and adjust on the fly. That's really the art of teaching and learning. And we're excited to be able to get back to that in all of our classrooms starting next week. I also want to shift gears a little bit. You're going to have a first reading of a bond issue. We know that we are getting to a point where we have to consolidate the district. The bond issue helps us to consolidate into new schools, as opposed to eventually having to consolidate into current schools that have been deemed obsolete by the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. That bond issue has the same exact components as the previous bond issue. It is a lower millage, however. The millage is down to 6.31. That reflects a lower interest rate. We had been at a 5% interest rate when we looked in November toward that issue. We are now at a 4 1/8, which is really sort of a conservative estimate that our financial advisor has advised. So certainly want to be able to lock in and take advantage of that lower interest rate. So wanted to make sure I explained that just in case there were questions as we come up. It is the same exact components. Nothing has changed in terms of the facilities that we'll be able to construct and then at Parma Senior High renovate, but it is a lower interest rate. So both of those items are certainly very large items in our school community. Again, we're really excited for kids, and if we are able to have the board approve the bond issue, we look forward to campaigning for the spring for May ballot.
Thank you, Dr. Smilek. Anything else?
That is all, sir.
Okay, move to communications. Sean, you have anything?
I do not have anything today.
Any other board members?
Awesome.
Seeing none. Do we have any amendments this evening?
We do not.
Okay. Do we have, at this point, it's time to open the meeting to public to address the board on tonight's agenda items. Have we received any requests?
We have not.
Okay. Then I move to adopt Resolution 2021-0108, approval of the written record of proceedings from the December 10th, 2020 regular and special and January 7th, 2021 Organizational Board of Education meetings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2021-0108. Any questions or comments? Mr. Nucio?
Mr. Schweitzer,
Yes?
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz,
Yes.
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Resolution 2021-0108 has been approved. A lot of 2021s in there.
Curriculum.
And there, we now move to curriculum with Mr. Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. I move to adopt resolution 2021-01-09, approval of the 2021-2022 school calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Resolution 2021-0109 for the 2021-2022 school calendar. Getting tongue-tied here.
Okay.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Nucio?
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz,
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Yes. Resolution 2021-0109 has been approved.
Yeah, I move to adopt resolution 2021-01-10, approval of College Credit Plus Partnership Memorandum of Understanding between Kent State University and the Parma City School District.
Second.
Motion and second for 2021-0110. Questions or comments? Mr. Nucio?
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz,
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Yes. 2021-0110 has been approved.
I move to adopt resolution 2021-01-11, granting authority of the administration to enter the contract with Bright Futures for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Resolution 2021-0111. Any questions or comments? Mr. Nucio?
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz,
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes. 2021-0111 has been approved.
Unless a board member has anything else to discuss, this concludes curriculum instruction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vaughn. That moves us on to business with Mr. Kreis.
Yes, I move to adopt resolution 2021-01-12, authorizing the sale of obsolete office equipment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for 2021-01-12. Questions or comments? Mr. Nucio?
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Yes. 2021-01-12 has been approved. That is some old stuff. I saw that.
Yeah.
Probably gonna go down to Smithsonian.
I really. Anything else under business, Mr. Kreis?
Unless another member has anything else to discuss, this concludes business for this evening.
Thank you very much, but right back at you with finance.
Yes, I move to proudly adopt Resolution 2021-01-13, a resolution declaring the necessity of submitting the single question of the issuance of school improvement bonds in the aggregate principal amount of $271 million for the purpose of constructing, furnishing, and equipping new school buildings and facilities for grades 6 through 12 on 2 campuses and otherwise constructing, renovating, remodeling, adding to, furnishing, equipping, and otherwise improving school district buildings and facilities, including improvements to the existing Parma Senior High School and clearing, improving, and equipping their sites, and the levy of an additional tax of 0.04 mils to provide funds for the acquisition, construction, enlargement, renovation, and financing of general permanent improvements to the electors of the school district of the school district pursuant to Schedule 5705.218 of the Ohio Revised Code.
I second that, but it's 0.4 mils.
Thank you.
And
It's
it's-
0.4 mils is the corrected.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
No problem.
It was easy to
My
miss.
track on that was a long one.
Yeah, it is. But you proudly did
I did,
it.
and I feel good about it.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Mr. Nucio?
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz,
yes,
Mr. Schweitzer,
Absolutely, yes. Resolution 2021-01-13 has been approved.
I move to adopt Resolution 2021-01-14, continuation of services with Local Government Services Division of the Auditor of State's Office of Gap Conversion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for 2021-01-14. Questions or comments? Mr. Nucio?
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz,
yes,
Mr. Schweitzer,
Yes. 2021-01-14 has been approved.
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-01-15, authorizing the disposal of obsolete office equipment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for 2021-01-15. Questions or comments?
This is old stuff.
Yeah, that's the stuff I saw. I stand corrected.
Yeah, this is the old stuff.
Mr. Nucio?
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz,
yes,
Mr. Schweitzer,
Yes, 2021-01-15 has been approved.
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-01-16, approval of supplemental appropriations.
Second.
Motion and a second for 2021-01-16. Questions or comments? Mr. Nucio?
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz,
yes,
Mr. Schweitzer,
Yes, 2021-01-16 has been approved.
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-01-17, authorization to accept activity purpose statement.
Second.
A motion and a second for 2021-01-17. Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Nucio?
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz,
yes,
Mr. Schweitzer,
Yes, 2021-01-17 has been approved.
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-01-18, acceptance of contributions and donations.
Second.
A motion second for 2021-0118. Questions or comments?
Oh, as usual, I would like to thank these fine people for remembering Parma City Schools. Those were some very generous donations. Thank you so much, so very much.
I agree.
I just wanted to echo that. And also, I hope people understand what a really significant impact a lot of these donations can make to what can be done for kids in the district.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Nucio.
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz,
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes, 2021-0118 has been approved.
Unless another board member has anything to discuss, this concludes finance for this evening.
Thank you very much. Legislation is normally Mrs. Carpus and Mrs. Bratz. Mrs. Bratz, do you have anything there?
I do not.
Okay, no problem. Human Resources, Mrs. Bratz.
Yes, that.
Thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. I move to adopt Resolution 2021-0119, approval of the following certificated exhibits: confirmation of stipend amounts, confirmation of supplemental contracts, confirmation of substitute teacher appointments, approval of certificated non-compensated leaves of absence, confirmation of supplemental appointments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for 2021-0119, and thank you, Steve. Any questions or comments? Mr. Nucio?
Mrs. Bratz,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes, 2021-0119 has been approved.
I move to adopt Resolution 2021-0120, acceptance of certificated retirement.
Second.
A motion second for 2021-0120. Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Nucio?
Mrs. Bratz,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes, 2021-0120 has been approved.
Before we move on, are we going to eventually have some of these people in or recognize them somehow? Or Mr. Charles?
Yes, we always wait until the end of the year to do that.
All right.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Very good.
I
Sorry
move
about
to
that.
I move to adopt Resolution 2021-0121, resolution to enter into separation agreement.
Second.
Motion second for 2021-0121. Questions or comments? Mr. Nucio?
Mrs. Bratz,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes, 2021-0121 has been approved.
I move to adopt Resolution 2021-0122, acceptance of certificated administrative resignation.
Second.
Motion second for 2021-0122. Questions or comments on the board? Mr. Nucio?
Mrs. Bratz,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes, 2021-0122 has been approved.
I move to adopt Resolution 2021-0123, approval of the following classified exhibits: confirmation of classified appointments and replacements, confirmation of change of classified assignments, confirmation of classified resignations, approval of classified non-compensated leaves of absence.
Second.
Motion second for 2021-0123. Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Nucio?
Mrs. Bratz,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes, Resolution 2021-0123 has been approved.
I move to adopt Resolution 2021-0124, acceptance of classified retirement.
Second.
Motion second for 2021-0124. Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Nucio?
Mrs. Bratz,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes, 2021-0124 has been approved.
I move to adopt Resolution 2021-0125, approve the recall from furlough of local number 165 bargaining unit members and related staff.
Second.
A motion and second for 2021-0125. Questions or comments? Mr. Nucio.
Mrs. Bratz.
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn.
Yes.
Mr. Kreis.
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes. Resolution 2021-0125 has been approved.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2021-0126, approval of contract with National Web Check Program Services and Equipment.
Second.
Motion and second for 2021-0126. Any questions or comments? Mr. Nucio.
Mrs. Bratz.
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn.
Yes.
Mr. Kreis.
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes. 2021-0126 has been approved.
Unless any board members have anything else they'd like to discuss, this concludes Human Resources for tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scott. Policies is normally Mrs. Carpus.
I got it.
Okay.
I'll second.
You're gonna second? Very good. I was just gonna say. Okay. We have 3 new resolutions, and then we have 2 first readings. So, I move to adopt resolution 2021-01-27, approval of revised policy 1520, employment of administrators.
Second.
Motion second for 2021-0127. Questions, comments? Mr. Nucio.
Mr. Vaughn.
Yes.
Mr. Kreis.
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz.
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes. 2021-0127 has been approved.
I move to adopt resolution 2021-01-28, the approval of revised policy 1530, evaluation of principals and other administrators.
Second.
Motion second for 2021-0128. Questions or comments?
Just the comments on both of those were pretty much Neola language changes, and I believe from our meeting the other day.
Yeah, it's just updates, I believe,
Updates,
right?
yes. Yep. Pretty
Okay.
basic nondescript stuff.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Mr. Nucio.
Mr. Vaughn.
Yes.
Mr. Kreis.
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz.
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes, 2021-0128 has been approved.
I move to adopt resolution 2021-01-29, approval of new policy 2266, non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education or activities.
Second.
Motion second for 2021-0129. Are there questions or comments? Mr. Nucio.
Mr. Vaughn.
Yes.
Mr. Kreis.
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz.
Yes.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes, 2021-0129 has been approved.
There's a first reading of a new policy of 6114, the cost of principal spending federal funds. And this is a first reading of a revised policy 6325, procurement federal grants and funds. And unless anybody else has anything else to discuss, this concludes policy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vaughn. Has there been any information requested by board members this evening? Any new questions to be read into the record this evening?
No, there's not.
Okay. At then, I move to adopt resolution 2021-0131 to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
We have a motion second to adopt resolution 2021-0131. Questions or comments? Mr. Nucio?
Mr. Schweitzer.
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn.
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz.
Yes.
Mr. Kreis.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-0131 has been approved. This meeting is adjourned.